Hey everyone, this is Tanner Duncan here, joined by a really awesome VR panel from really across the whole country, mostly from Iowa, but we got Shannon Putnam down here in the corner. Uh, it looks like she's from Syracuse, but she's based out of Louisville. Um, got a bunch of great VR people in this call, and really we just want to chat about what's happening in VR and education and the ways that people are using it around the country. Each one of these three groups are using it very differently, and that's why I invited everyone here today. Um, John is based out of Fairfield, Iowa. He purchased the Lenovo uh, wireless unit to get a bunch of kids in the headset at one time. Kyle Colors is out of Waterloo. He brought one of his students, Alex, along, or former students, and they're both going to talk about how they have used VR in the classroom and empowered students to kind of branch out into the community and use VR in different ways. And then Shannon is a longtime friend and a VR rock star, and she can talk about her title. She's a doctorate, really studying, doctorate student studying VR at the University of Louisville, and has big plans for VR heading forward. So, um, thanks everyone for joining us. We have a few people on the call today. This will be posted at the iTech conference in Iowa, and so it will be recorded, and you can go back and check it out later. But we're gonna pass it over to John first to he's the newest one of the group that's really dove into kind of the higher end VR. But John, why don't you take it away? Talk about your VR experience and why you chose the method you did.
So we started several years ago with the Google Expeditions. We bought enough that we couldn't quite outfit a whole class, but it was a lot better than nothing. So we had kids sharing, and it was great. We used the snot out of them for a long time. Then we found that if you weren't somewhat specialized with the system, it got a little bit harder just from a general teacher's perspective, trying to get all of the stuff loaded on them and make sure each individual thing was charged and put into the headsets and things. So it was a little bit clunky at times, but we were still very happy with it. So we have some local foundation grants. We were going to try and get some new ones, but we were having trouble looking at that. And that's when I talked to Tanner, and he said, hey, there's some newer ones we should look at. So we started looking at that, and then we found out that the expeditions were going to be discontinued and things. So we started to look a little further in what else we could do, and we looked at the Lenovo's and had a test one sent to us. And one of the first things that stood out for me is that with the expeditions, most of that was like a still picture. And you, as a teacher, could lead your students around there and talk about different things, but it was a still picture. You just stood there and looked. And I wanted something more. I wanted to take it to the next level where there was motion, and you could get some 360 videos off of YouTube and things, but that was a little bit tricky about how to do. So as soon as I took this out of the box and put it on my head, boom, within 2 minutes, I'm in Africa looking up at a giraffe, and it's full video and everything with the narration, and my jaw just kind of dropped a little bit. So then we continued to look at this and some of the other content that was available. Not all of it was necessarily live action, it was computer generated, but being able to jump into the inside of a leaf and look at the photosynthesis process and things like that. And then we started looking around, and there was stuff on career education. We started thinking about our high school students and things. And as we played with this a little bit more, we figured out how easy it was to upload your own content, because that was something else we wanted to do. With COVID, we had our high school principal start doing a virtual tour of our high school with our 360 camera, and to be able to have that on some headsets like that, so kids could actually tour the school without being there, or if you had prospective students coming to check it out, that might be really kind of cool. And the fact that we could take this ourselves, create it, and put it up there was just really awesome. And we started thinking, when our students go out to the county park and do a crick stomp, they could take the camera and create these virtual experiences that would be more than just a still photo. And then we started to look at kind of the backside and how to manage them. And the management piece is through a cloud portal that made it so much easier, I think, than what the original expeditions were, with having to download stuff on individual headsets and things like this. This way, I log in, even if I'm at the central office in our district and I've got 6 headsets in 3 different buildings, I can still push the content out to them. I can still start them at the same time and have some of that control. And then we even looked at the fact that we could have teachers set up their own classes and they could set up what videos their kids would have access to and what content they would have access to and have full control there. It just seemed like a really nice streamlined process. And the price point was really pretty affordable. So we got together a couple grants and we've purchased 36 of them. We'll probably have, like 30 of them set for a class set. And we'll send a few out to the high school, to the guidance department for career exploration and things like that, and start working from there. And that's kind of where we got to this point. Right now, we're waiting for them to be delivered. So that's how new we are at this. But that's kind of our vision and where we want to go and what we're looking at doing for our next step.
Awesome, John. Hey, when did someone approach you about looking at VR for your district, or how did the idea of like expanding VR and what it could do for the classroom get started for you?
I started thinking about it a long time ago, and then came iTech. I'd see it here and there, and that's kind of where I saw some Google Expedition stuff. But then through the idea of esports and things, and then just more at iTech and the vendors and things like that, and talking with Tanner and people like that, it just brought the information closer and sitting there and trying to play with it. I mean, that was the big selling point for me was trying it out, because you can sit and talk about it and you can watch videos about it, but until you actually put it on and experience it, it's kind of a game changer, I think.
Definitely agree. The Lenovo headset's a great one, and we've seen some deployments on it. John has probably made the biggest investment that I've seen on my end, and it's cool because you can take this headset and really see what content students are viewing at the time, and there's some grading built into it as well. It's a device that was really built for the classroom, and Lenovo's done a great job with that. So, did you guys have any trouble, selling it to admin or trying to get any approval on that side of things, or can you
No,
talk about that process?
with the people that we had, a lot of times I said, "Hey, come into my office." I set them down on a stool and I said, "Put this on. Let's go to Africa." And then the oohs and the ahs started, and they're spinning around in the chair and looking around and jump when all of a sudden there's a giraffe tongue right in their ear, and it was just really kind of cool. So that's the approach I took. Is I carried that with me, and I said, "Here, put this on." Or what I then did too is, I mean, I had a 360 video. We have land in northern Wisconsin, and we had a video out in the middle of the lake. I said, "Here, put this on." And it was freezing cold outside. Next thing you know, it's the middle of July on a lake, and they're sitting there on the boat. And then I put in the video of a concert that we did, that we recorded one of the songs in 360. So I just really brought it to stuff that we did here, including the high school virtual tour. And when they could see our own students in these videos, our own buildings, that really brought it home. It wasn't just someplace far off. They could see that we could be creating this locally too.
Awesome, John. Thank you. So today we're really talking about 3 different unique situations, and John's was it's a non-tethered headset, so you don't need a computer to run it. And Kyle from Waterloo has a combination of some wireless headsets that you don't need a computer to run, and then some VR carts and some tethered units that really allow students to be creative, use Unity and design software to create their own experiences. And Kyle's probably one of the better teachers I've ever met that in empowering his students to accomplish things like that. So based out of Waterloo, I'm going to let him kind of take it away and tell his story on how VR got started and go from there.
All right, thanks, Tanner. Like you said, I'm Kyle Coolers. I'm a high school teacher here at Waterloo at the Waterloo Career Center. The Career Center is a CTE building. It's a pullout. There are students from 9 surrounding districts that send students here besides the Waterloo public and parochial schools. And so I teach the web development and computer programming. And so When I started here 3 years ago at Waterloo, I wanted to reach out to the local businesses and contact them and find out what tools, skill sets they need my students to have to get a job when they, graduate from high school or go to the community college for 2 years or go to the 4-year college. And so our businesses were, and they continue to be very active in my classroom, and they really appreciate that opportunity. And so I quickly learned from them that Unity and virtual reality were the 2 areas that locally here in the Cedar Valley, which is the Waterloo, Cedar Falls area, were 2 of the skill sets that students needed to have some opportunities in. So I got a message in my email from ByteSpeed, one of those messages that probably most people ignore. And so, but I'm not that type of person. I like to explore all those messages. And so I jumped in and I contacted Tanner and we got going. As I visited the businesses, for example, when I went to John Deere, I was able to experience and to see how they use VR, and they use it so that when they're doing developing repair parts or new parts for the tractors, they can cut down their cycle times from about 2 weeks to about 3 to 4 hours. And that really saves them a lot of time and it speeds up their whole development process. So I'm like, okay, this is what I want my students to start to experience and to be doing. Visited several other of the local businesses and the college, University of Northern Iowa, some of those areas, and got some ideas there. But there was a common theme that all of our local employers needed human capital. And so that's my students. And so that's I looked at it as an amazing way to start to build partnerships. And so these discussions got me excited. And so when I approached my administrator, he, said, what do you need? We'll take care of it. But I didn't know what I needed. And so I knew what I wanted to do, but I didn't know what I needed. So it was kind of challenging. And that's where ByteSpeed and Tanner came in. We got our first workstation ordered in February of 2019. My students got it running almost, immediately in that first week or two. And then my classes started to explore, the virtual reality. And so they have I build into my class a good chunk of time for them to explore an interest. And so I call it a capstone project. And so they spend that time. And so some of the students would spend it with virtual reality. And so I really try to emphasize to my students, I want them to be creators and not necessarily just consumers. And so my classroom's kind of like an experimental lab. And so I want to introduce you to one of those students. And so he took the deep dive into virtual reality and just kind of let him share a little bit about his experience. So Alex, if you want to come up here.
Okay, so, my name is Alex Jones, and I recently became a graduate of the Waterloo Career Center, and I've also made that transition from, the Career Center to becoming a college student for Hawkeye Community College. But one of the more impressive things I've done is I've also become a research and development emerging scholar for the University of Northern Iowa's Center for Educational Transformation. So, all the way back in, I think it was 2018, I became a junior in high school, and the Career Center was opening up more and more classes. So I was really interested in taking some of the programming classes because that's what I had an interest in. I really wanted to see where programming would take me in life as a career option. So I started taking some programming classes, and one of them I had taken was Intro to Programming Logic with Kyle Coolers. And then he basically taught me the building blocks of programming. So that was pretty good. And then, so I learned the basics of programming, and then eventually I heard the news that the Career Center was interested in purchasing some virtual reality equipment and virtual reality headsets so we could do some virtual reality programming. So then, I heard about that and I was kind of excited, but then we did some research in class. I remember Kyle played some virtual reality videos, and we also found some, I think they're called scientific articles, basically educational articles that show the benefits of virtual reality and all the uses you can do for it. And that's kind of what cleared my first misconception about virtual reality. Is I kind of started it thinking this is a really exciting content platform where you can play the video games, you can be a gamer, but then that's only the first half of it, because then I learned that the other half of virtual reality is the training simulations and the interactive stories and being able to use that for education and like being able to interact with 3D models and really getting those students engaged to like train them and educate them. So we were doing that, and then we occasionally, you know, take our virtual reality lab out to field trips. We'd let local businesses kind of get interested in it when they come to visit our career center. Yeah, so that's how I met the university's Center for Educational Transformation. As they came here one day and they saw like what I was doing with the virtual reality equipment, and they were really interested. And then, you know, COVID kind of happened, so things got a little bit confusing and kind of like we had to go like online and do the Zoom calls and all that stuff. But then we were able to finish the paperwork during the COVID event. And then I was able to get the job, and I was even able to borrow like one of the virtual reality systems, bring it home. So that way, like while I was kind of stuck at home, I could still further my education on virtual reality and be able to make those virtual reality projects happen for the CET, the Center for Educational Transformation. And yeah, I learned a variety of really good skills, a lot of really interesting stuff about VR. And then, you know, VR is just this, it's kind of a new thing, but it's kind of old, but it's really become popular in the recent years. And it has a lot of uses for both, not just like the educational environment, but like society in general. And virtual reality just has a lot of interesting impacts.
Thanks, Alex. That's awesome.
Good. Yeah. Thanks, Alex. Just kind of now in wrapping up, I want to encourage any and all of the educators out there, do not have hesitations about jumping into virtual reality. I knew ground zero nothing, but I got the word from my local businesses that, hey, this is an area where we need to start developing, and we need to have human capital. We need workers, employees, and they can stay right here in the Cedar Valley area in Iowa, and they can have good paying jobs. What kind of drives our purchases a little bit is that whole development piece. And so one of the things that the students found out is they started working on, they said, hey, what if we make an arcade? And so we started doing that. And but they found out quickly that the hardware and some of the software programs are different for the arcade than what we use when we develop. And so so we worked with our marketing. We did some collaboration with some of the other classes and worked together as a group and kind of got that path started, and then COVID hit. So, but my students this semester are picking that project back up, and Hy-Vee has jumped on board. They see what we're doing here, the Hy-Vee in the local Cedar Valley, and they're just like, hey, we want to partner with you guys. We want to have a kiosk in Hy-Vee. We want to have a VR kiosk in Hy-Vee. So someone can come in with their kids, and their kids can be, you know, playing VR while they're out doing their grocery shopping. And so, you know, we'll get there, not right away, but we'll get there and get back on track eventually. But finding those business partnerships is huge. And University of Northern Iowa, the local college here, has been a great partner. We had 4 students that were getting paid internships, high schoolers, 2 semesters ago. Last semester, we had 3 and in the programming area. And so the language that we have to work with is C#. So just kind of in closing, I want to suggest for everybody out there to kind of think of ways you could use virtual reality in your classroom, in your school, or in your community. It might be in biology class, dissecting a pig virtually. It might be in your classroom where you're doing some visits, kind of some of what John, you know, talked about, where you can go visit some of those far off places that students may never visit. You could also, maybe from a staff, you could do a training with your staff and have it be where they can virtually experience what a student sitting in your classroom with migraines, what they experience and what they feel, what they're going through as they're sitting in your classroom if they have a migraine headache. So opportunities are limitless as we give our students the tools and develop the creator skills to make them employable in 2021 and beyond. We need the workforce.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kyle. You know, I've been with ByteSpeed for 4 years now, and how much VR has progressed over those 4 years is really crazy. Now we're getting to a point where there's a lot of educational content, not just the gamification or gaming experiences that we saw up front, where it was like, hey, we can just play Beat Saber and do some fun things. And now there's so much education content that's just really built around STEM. and it's been pretty cool. And so with that, I'm going to transition over to Shannon. Like I said, Shannon's been a good friend of mine the last couple of years. She probably, to my knowledge, she has the largest single deployment of headsets in the United States. Of is it what, like over 150 standalone headsets with Jefferson County School District out in Kentucky. She's the mastermind behind it. She's brilliant. So I'm just gonna let her go to work and kind of watch. So here she is.
Well, thank you for that build-up. I hope I live up to the hype. I'm just going to share my screen and kind of give a little presentation because it allows you to kind of see what we've done here in Kentucky and what we're trying to do and continue to do, and just give you, you know, just so you can actually see what we've been doing. And so this is the actual virtual reality lab that I created at Cochran Elementary. I taught special ed for 11 years, and then I was a teacher in residence for 2 years, and created the first virtual reality lab in an elementary school in Kentucky. I started using virtual reality in my own instruction back when Oculus had their DK2 kit. So about 6 to 7 years I've been working with it. And when we originally started, we started with 50 Oculus Go's. And then when we went into our second year, we made the switch from Oculus to HTC Vive for a lot of different reasons, primarily because of Oculus being owned by Facebook, the fact that they're not interested in education and they're focused on consumerism per their own education director, and that HTC is designed more for the industry and education market. So like they don't even have Beat Saber on the Vive Focus Plus. But we have done some pretty exciting things and we're really proud of it. And the reason we love VR is because it actually creates an experience. And that's what we want to do with education. How we've actually continued, we took that lab and we've expanded it to 2 more elementary schools. And then Jefferson County Public Schools, JCPS, has an almost $400,000 VR project just waiting. We've been working on it, and of course COVID and everything, but we've still managed to do some work. And part of that includes those 155 Vive Focus Plus headsets, but also 2 flame trainers, which I can show you later in the presentation. And I'm going to try to keep it quick, so I'm moving quickly through. But if you notice, we have the students sitting on stools so that they can experience everything 360 degrees and not be hindered by anything. We also have 4 Vive Pro eyes. So we do have tethered headsets as well, but not out at the schools. I have those here at the University of Louisville, where we're currently developing our own VR Innovation Center here. And because of COVID, we had to switch. And so we're working with pre-service teachers because I was able to work with the college students. And one of the things that we did was we actually held class in VR. The professor and I actually delivered headsets, and then students joined us. And this was in the Vive Sync platform. And they created a U of L room for us. And we were at the foot of the Golden Gate Bridge. And we had a student actually, the first part of the class, the professor taught it per normal. And then the second half was actually one of the students. And she taught her lesson like she would have taught it in her 3rd grade classroom, but couldn't because of COVID. So she was actually able to still get that teaching experience and get feedback from everybody, and also up her game because the book that they read was about lion cubs. And you can see in the upper left, she was actually able to bring in a 3D fully animated lion cub that ran through the room. And those are some of those tools that we get with VR that you cannot do in the regular classroom. And everyone's like, oh, well, you can show a video of a lion. Yes, you can, but it's absolutely not the same. And until you get that headset on and experience it, you kind of just have to take my word for it and the word of countless students and researchers. I just did this lesson yesterday with the social studies methods class, and the pre-service teachers experienced My Brother's Keeper, which is a fantastic experience created by PBS, and it puts you right in the middle of the Civil War with two brothers on opposite sides. And so we're getting these pre-service teachers and we're showing them the VR, the power of it, and teaching them how to use it so that they can then take that with them to the classroom, and we're getting them prepared so that now hopefully on like Donors Choose and stuff, we're going to start seeing headsets instead of just tablets or Chromebooks, things like that. And so this was them experiencing it and all with masks and still maintaining safe distance. And I will tell you how we've done this safely as well. And we also had teachers take headsets home when we were not in person because of COVID. So they were learning the headsets, what was on there, and they actually integrated the headsets into their lessons whilst they were at home, so that when we come back to in person, which we just started back this week, they'll be prepared and ready to use the headsets in their instruction, which was awesome that they were willing to do that, because it's really taking advantage of an opportunity we otherwise wouldn't have had. So we're trying to find that silver lining of COVID. And these are just some examples of different things we've done I've done with students, but I'll keep this as I'm kind of winding down and rounding out here. I'll keep this as this is my like go-to example of the power of VR, and especially in education, because so many teachers are like, oh, well, is there an app for that? Is there an app for that? They always think there needs to be an app for it. And yes, we need to continue to make educational apps. However, we already have everything that we need if we just switch our thinking and how we use it. So I had a second grade teacher ask me if there was anything with money. They were doing money skills. And I taught emotional and behavior disorder students who are angry, violent, young boys mostly. And I would have not signed up for the second grade class because it was a tough one. And I was like, well, let me look. There wasn't an app on VR for let's teach money. There wasn't anything like that. And I'm like, well, I've been playing this fishing game called Bait, and it was oddly addictive. And so I was like, all right, yeah, I got you. So brought the students in, and for the first 20 to 30 minutes, they just got to play. They got to play Bait, and it's an actual interactive fishing game. So they actually have to cast the line out. They have to reel it in. There's force and pressure, and it can break the line and everything else. And these are students who live next to the Ohio River and have never been fishing. And so I'm talking 98% free and reduced launch Title I school. And I just whipped off a quick Excel sheet. And so every time they caught a fish, they had to record the weight, how many stars, the name, and how many coins they got. And so then after about 20 or 30 minutes, they took a break out of the headsets. They had to tally everything up, add everything up. So we're getting our math already started. And then we discussed, it expanded into estimation. I said, okay, well, this tangerine tang right here, it was, 1.68 kg, it got you 150 coins. How heavy do you think it would need to be to get you 300 coins, 3 stars? We talked about estimation, weight, metric conversions, which is also a super boring subject, and this would make it a lot more fun. And then it took a turn that I never would have expected. And I had noticed this one girl was telling another girl to go to the deeper water. And I said, well, what did you do if you couldn't find fish? And she's like, I went to the deeper water. I said, why'd you go to the deeper water? She said, that's because that's where the bigger fish are. I said, well, why are the bigger fish in the deeper water? And she said, because the water's colder. And I said, well, why is the water colder? And another student said, because the sun doesn't reach it. So it turned into this whole earth science lesson off of one fishing game that I could have never anticipated. And then the key part about it then was we talked about the money that they earned and what they wanted to do. So now they had real life consequences for their money and their spending that they were vested in. They cared about it. And if you know a gamer at all, armor, skins, all of that stuff is incredibly important. It might as well be real money. And so they cared about it. So we talked, do you want to save your money, or do you want and get, save it for a better fishing rod, or do you want to get the bait now? And they talked about it. Then they actually got to go back in and play and spend their money. And for the 60-minute lesson, I didn't have a single behavior problem. There were students who were not allowed to stand next to each other in line, and they were talking to each other during the lesson. So it's not like it's some magic, cure-all, and they were best friends, but it was the best lesson that they had the entire year. And that was off of one fishing game. And so if we can just change our thinking, we already have everything that we need. And so I will just close with how we've used it safely. So we have invested in a clean box, which is a fantastic piece of technology. And so in the 2 years I've had my lab open, I have never had one instance of lice or pink eye or anything, because we are already so dedicated to sanitation. But this takes it to the next level. And we pop our headset in there, and it goes through a 1-minute cycle, and it's sanitized from everything from CDC level sanitation, from H1N1, SARS, COVID, everything. So the lesson I did yesterday with the pre-service teachers, I wore gloves and put each headset through the clean box, right in the box. And then the only person who touched that headset was the student who used it. So we're able to continue through COVID. And that's how we have kept pushing forward. So I know there's a lot, but I could always go on forever. Tanner knows I'm quite long-winded, so I'm going to end it there. But there's so much more, and there's so much potential that we can do with VR.
Yeah, well, we packed a lot of information in a quick half hour there. All three of these brilliant VR advocates are willing and able to answer questions outside of this video. So feel free to reach out to me. I can connect you with any of them. If you just have questions on how to get started with VR, or want to talk to each one of these panelists on what devices that you should choose, or why they chose their devices, or go into further detail, reach out to me. I'm happy to help out with that. We're already over our time. So thanks to everyone for showing up and coming. No, you're good, Shannon. Awesome. Thanks for coming. I appreciate everyone swinging by, and feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Have a good one. Thank you, guys.